Alright guys, we've got plenty of talking points to go through in today's video. All of the weekend's games will be discussed, and we also have a full fixture list coming up in midweek in the Championship as well, which we will be predicting in the second half of today's video. So loads of talking points to get our teeth sunk into. As always, do leave your thoughts down below and do leave a like if you do go on to enjoy. But without any further ado, let's hop into these matches. And starting out on the Friday night for Birmingham 2, West Brom 0. With everything going on off the pitch, I thought that could have played into West Brom's advantage for this game, but it didn't transpire that way, and a richly deserved 3 points for Birmingham in the end. Back-to-back wins, finally they've started to gather a little bit of momentum after what was a bit of a disastrous start to 2023. Birmingham the much better side in the first half and justifiably in front after the first 45 minutes. Hannibal with that quite inventive free kick catches David Button out to score his first ever senior goal. He's the sort of player that does have the confidence to pull off that sort of thing. From a West Brom perspective though, I mean, it was a massive blunder by David Button, and this is a real issue that West Brom are going to have to contend with now, with Alex Palmer currently out injured. The contrast in performances from Palmer to Button this season is absolutely staggering. For context, Alex Palmer currently has the best save percentage of any Championship goalkeeper that's played 5 or more matches at 77.6%, and on the reverse side of that, David Button has the worst save percentage in the Championship at just 51.4%. He's faced 37 shots this season and conceded 19 goals, and having a gaping flaw in such a crucial position could be really costly for West Brom's top 6 bid this season. More of the same in the second half really. Birmingham wrapped it up through Christian Bielik. Button came for it, didn't manage to get anything on it, and Bielik headed Birmingham home. West Brom not having much going forward for them. I thought that Birmingham defended quite well and limited West Brom to half chances here and there, and a great way for Birmingham to pick up back-to-back wins. Into the Saturday matches, we then had Blackpool playing out a goalless draw with Rotherham. Expected this one to be quite a tight and cagey game, and in the end it transpired to be that way. From a Blackpool perspective, I think the overall performance was a step in the right direction, but ultimately another quite frustrating result where this winless run continues for another week, and Rotherham were always going to make it difficult. Thought they started to really grow into the game in the second half when the game looked to be a little bit more stretched in terms of both sides having some opportunities. Blackpool did have the ball in the back of the net, but that was ruled out due to an offside. Jerry Yates just going a little bit too early when he had the ball squared to him, and it's a weird situation that Blackpool find themselves in, because a few more positives in terms of the overall performance, but another draw in what was really a little bit of a must-win game for Blackpool. Certainly one of the Rotherham and Huddersfield games I think had to be all 3 points for Blackpool. Looking at their next 4 fixtures now, I think there has to be at least 2 wins from these next 4 that Blackpool have got against Swansea, Stoke, Blackburn and Reading. All quite winnable fixtures, but the way in which Blackpool have been going about their business lately, even that's going to be a tough stretch. Obviously they are now rooted to the bottom of the Championship with Wigan picking up that result, so performance heading in the right direction, results still not there for Blackpool. After that to Ashton Gate, and Bristol City's fantastic run continuing here. I had them down to get a point from this one, but picking up all 3 in the end. Now 6 unbeaten in the Championship, and Norwich have been a bit of a funny side really. Under Daniel Wagner, they had that initial bounce under him with those 2 fantastic away showings at Preston and Coventry, but very much have been brought down to earth with back-to-back defeats in 2 games where they failed to score, and those sloppy defensive mistakes which were apparent in the first half of the season have once again been rearing their head recently. Now, we spoke last time about Tim Krul, the mistakes he made against Burnley. As a reaction to that, Norwich went ahead and changed up the goalkeepers for this one, bringing in Angus Gunn. I have to admit he was really weak for that first effort. The Sykes goal, which just sort of squirms under him. A goalkeeper of his calibre should be doing a lot better, but perhaps that's a consequence of chopping and changing the goalkeepers. They don't have that sort of natural rhythm within their game, and from that point Norwich sort of struggled to get back into this one. They had plenty of the ball and some chances playing through the thirds, but when it came to clear-cut opportunities, I thought that Bristol City defended really quite well for this one actually, blocking off angles, goals, putting their bodies on the line for shots, ultimately meaning that Norwich only had one shot on target throughout the entire 90 minutes of this one. They did have the ball in the back of the net in the second half, but the flag had already gone up, and to be honest, it was probably Bristol City with the best chance in the second half through Cornick, who should have wrapped it up and made it 2-0 to Bristol City. So they're on a fantastic run at the moment, and for Norwich, yeah, it's just been a bump down to reality recently, hasn't it? After that's Turf Moor, and I mean, I have to hold my hands up here and say fair play to Burnley. They absolutely played us off the park in this one. Didn't have a great feeling going into it, but on the day itself, Burnley absolutely ran riot, and to be honest, it was a little bit humiliating in the second half especially. Felt as if they were taking pity on us, and it could have been 5 or 6 with ease had Burnley kept their foot on the pedal for the second half, and Preston's game plan sort of unravelled as soon as we conceded that opening goal. Really disappointing way to go ahead and do so, from a sort of second phase of a set play, coming back in, allowing a player like Teller to have a free header at the near post is, yeah, shocking stuff from us defensively, and Teller in the second half absolutely ripped us apart. The pick of the goals probably being his second one when he absolutely rinses Liam Lindsay, fakes to go on his right foot, goes on his left and puts it in at the near post. And to be honest, both him and Zaroury absolutely ran riot all afternoon. Zaroury especially, I thought, up against Alan Brown, absolutely every time without fail, just completely rinsed him, and in a humiliating fashion as well. We couldn't live with their 1v1 ability, and like I said, in the second half, felt like they went easy on us really after they got that third goal. I think it was summed up by the fact that Murich's average position for this one was outside of his box, and yeah, Preston just didn't cause any threat whatsoever. From a North End point of view, listen, it's no disgrace to be losing at Burnley, especially at Turf Moor. This will happen to countless other Championship sides throughout the season, but I think the real frustration with Preston at the moment is that this is an accumulation of the previous results. Why the fan base is feeling like this at the moment, and there have been a lot of, tempers flaring up, a lot of fans feeling that Ryan Lowe is running out of ideas at the moment, and especially with our dismal home form at the moment, the fact that we're going into a really tough looking home match next against Luton, it doesn't get much easier for North End to go ahead and turn things around from our current run of form. And it's all very well looking at the league table saying we're in 12th at the moment, but the actuality is we're only 2 points away from 18th, and at the moment it only looks as if we're heading in one direction. So fair play to Burnley, projected to finish on well over 100 points, and playing like that, I think they will this season. After that too, Middlesbrough up against Cardiff. Cardiff, the misery compiles upon them, 12 without a win now, and we all knew coming into this one that it was going to be difficult against Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough starting this one really well, such a slick move for that first goal. Cardiff do get back into it, Robinson latches onto that loose ball and sets up the equaliser before Middlesbrough re-establish their lead, and it's trademark Cameron Archer. Has taken him a little bit of time to settle into this Middlesbrough squad, but that goal right there with him pointing where he wants it, running off the shoulder of the last defender and taking it around the keeper and slotting it into the back of the net is exactly the type of goal I expect to see him scoring on the regular basis for Middlesbrough in this second half of the season. Second half in the game did look to get a little bit scrappy. Middlesbrough did threaten maybe to give something back to Cardiff, but eventually they re-established their 2-goal lead and wrapped that one up in the second half. So good win for Middlesbrough, continuing on their impressive run. For Cardiff, things don't get much easier for them. It's going to be another tough game in midweek against the Birmingham side, who themselves have rediscovered a little bit of form. Next then to Coventry up against Luton. A solid point I'd suggest for both sides in this one, finishing as a 1-1. Tom Lockyer taking the lead for the away side after only about 38 seconds were on the clock. It was a lightning start by Luton. Ball in from the right hand side, gets a bit of a flick on, and Lockyer's there to go ahead and put them 1-0 up. Few other decent chances I thought that Luton had in that first half, but it was Coventry who get back into it on the stroke of half time, Matty Godden converting that penalty. Second half looks to get a little bit more scrappy between these two, chances at either end, the most notable moment being that red card in the end for Wilson Esbrand, as the tempers seem to flare up between both sides towards the final whistle. But in the end, I wouldn't suggest that's the worst point in the world for either side. Coventry could definitely do with returning to winning ways, just one win now from their last 8 championship championship matches, but up against Luton, I don't think a point can be sniffed at. In terms of Luton, very much looking forward to seeing what they've got to offer in midweek, as they will obviously be coming up to Preston. Next then to QPR up against Millwall. Had a feeling coming into this one that Millwall might do a job on QPR away from home, and in the end that's exactly what transpired here. QPR fans, want to get your guys' views on Neil Critchley at the moment. Just one win now from his first 10 matches in charge, and it's not exactly been the new manager bounce that a few of us were perhaps expecting from Critchley in at QPR. And once again, a lot of what we were saying in the preview sort of came true in this one. The fact that it was Chair once again trying to get things going. I think of the 9 shots that QPR had in the end, Chair was responsible for 7 of them, had 5 shots himself and provided 2 key passes. So yeah, their most creative spark by a landslide at the moment, but other than that, no one else is really pulling their weight in that forward trio at the moment. In terms of Millwall, good, disciplined, defensive display, and going forward had their moments of quality as well. Played on the vulnerability of some of those weaknesses in that QPR back line. Tremendous finish from Watmore for the first one. Some really slack defending that allowed Burke to score the second. Martin did get one back for QPR, but this bad momentum just continues for QPR. With Sheffield United beating Swansea 3-0 in this one, it's only 2 wins from Swansea's last 14 championship matches. Really has been a tail off from them. We knew coming into this one how tough it was going to be. We spoke about somewhat of an improved performance against Birmingham, but ultimately leading to nothing. And in the end, this one was going to be an uphill battle from the start. To be fair, Swansea did start out fairly brightly. Perot had a few chances, but as soon as Sheffield United click up into gear, there's no stopping them in this sort of form. Sanderberger with a terrific finish from outside the box to get them going. Robinson doubled in their lead just before half-time, and then Ollie McBurney striking against his former club to make it 3 on the 89th minute. From a Swansea perspective, you'd imagine it would be a fairly decent opportunity to get back to winning ways and maybe rediscover some form in midweek, given they're going up against Blackpool, the side currently on the longest winless run in the Championship. But I don't think there are any certainties with this Swansea side as things stand. From a Sheffield United point of view, continuing to look really good. 10 points clear of Middlesbrough in 3rd place at the moment, with a game in hand on top of that. Hull would have been keen on making it 3 wins on the bounce, but in the end it was a goalless draw that was played out between themselves and Stoke City. Not the best spectacle in the Championship going on this weekend, so I won't spend all too long discussing this one. Another point in the right direction for Hull. For Stoke, probably seen more so as another game that's not been won. It is a big fixture list, a big month actually, the remainder of February for Stoke City and their bid to pull away from the bottom 3, which is still alarmingly close given their situation. Next 2 games up against Huddersfield and Blackpool. I think Stoke have to be taking a minimum of 4 points from those 2 fixtures. It was a good win for Sunderland in midweek, 1-0 against Reading. I'm sure it started to have that feeling, especially creeping towards the 80-minute mark, that it would be another one of those matches for Sunderland where they did craft out some decent chances, but ultimately weren't clinical enough to get anything over the line. It was probably Patrick Roberts who was their live wire throughout the afternoon, and so timely that he was the player to go on and score that winning goal. Given how Reading had defended for the majority of it, I think they'll have been disappointed the way in which the goal came about. The fact that they had the opportunity to win it back on a couple of occasions and didn't clear their lines before allowing Roberts to wriggle in down that right hand side and slot in with a terrific finish. Great 3 points there for Sunderland. For Reading, it's a little bit of an awkward one at the moment because they are one of those sides in this part of the Championship where I think they'll be too good to go down this season, but they don't have enough to challenge the sides further up the league and above them, and so they're sort of in limbo and maybe at risk of just coasting it out for the rest of the season, which I'm sure plenty of Reading fans probably will have taken at the start of the season, given plenty of us had tipped them for relegation, but it is frustrating nonetheless, I'm sure. After that, for Watford up against Blackburn, I don't feel as if that's the worst point on the road there for Blackburn, who have been the strangest team in the Championship so far this season. To have gone that long without a draw, to then draw 3 consecutive games on the bounce, I mean, just sums up the Championship really. Bradley Dack giving them the lead before Watford got back into it in the second half. It just feels like these last few weeks, especially for Watford, have been a massive missed opportunity. The draws against Blackburn, Reading and Rotherham, all 3 games which on paper I think Watford would have been coming into thinking, okay, 3 points from those matches, because after this weekend the fixture list for Watford does take a significant spin in terms of fixture difficulty. The next 3 in the Championship are up against Burnley, West Brom and Sheffield United. If they're to come out of those 3 fixtures, you know, on the receiving end of some harsh scorelines, I mean, given the way the club's run, I'd certainly be fearing for Bilic's future, if I'm honest. And then to round things off for the weekend, we had Wigan beating Huddersfield by 1-0. Wigan off the bottom of the Championship in a massive 3 points, which cannot be underestimated in this one. Big impact that Maloney's had since going in there. We mentioned the subtle improvements that were in place for that game against Blackburn, and the facts are back-to-back clean sheets for Wigan, 4 points from their last 2 matches. This was just the springboard that they were after, and the springboard in results that just never really appeared or seemed to be on the horizon under Kolo Touré. From a Huddersfield perspective, it was Knockout trying to create things, but apart from that, really offered very little in this game. Knockout himself did have a penalty appeal, but I think in that situation, with him going down quite lightly, his reputation was always going to go before him. Watmore popping up with a header at the far post to go and win this one for Wigan, and it's going to be a massive week for both clubs now. Wigan going into quite a tough looking match against Bristol City, followed by a home game against Norwich. From a Huddersfield perspective, I think this has been a really shocking few weeks actually. They tried to get that bounce with getting rid of Fotheringham on the back of that Blackpool result. They've not got a bounce in this Wigan game. It's another winnable game, I'd suggest, or at least a game coming up in midweek where they could get something against a Stoke side who themselves have been faltering recently, but it does feel as if this Huddersfield squad is just running out of steam at the moment. But guys, those were all the matches that went on in the Championship over the weekend. Do get your thoughts on them in the comments down below. Very interested to hear some of your guys' viewpoints. Before we go ahead and wrap up for today, we do have some midweek predictions to go ahead and dive into. So heading into the midweek fixtures, it's quite the mixed bag we've got in terms of different sides going up against each other. Birmingham up against Cardiff. I think I have to favour Birmingham for this one. They found a vein of form recently with back-to-back wins, and with Cardiff on the second longest winless run in the Championship, going to go 2-0 Blues in that one. Actually like what I saw from them over the weekend against West Brom. Coventry up against Millwall. Another quite tight game, but do you know what? I was quite impressed with what I saw with Millwall on the road, who are slowly starting to change their fortunes perhaps on the road where they have been a little bit inconsistent. Coventry got a decent point against Luton, but I actually think that Millwall could just scrape that one on the road. 2-1 Millwall, I'm saying, for that game. Norwich up against Hull. Hull had that goalless draw over the weekend with Stoke. Norwich are looking to bounce back from quite a disappointing defeat. Norwich have been a bit of a mixed bag really under Wagner so far. I'm going to go for a draw in that one. I think Rossini's got Hull really well drilled at the moment, but for Norwich to lose another one on the bounce would be damning to their top 6 hope. So I'm going to go 1-1 in that game. QPR up against Sunderland. QPR just can't buy a result at the moment, and while I don't think Sunderland have an abundance of goals in them at the moment, I think they probably do have a bit more about them than this QPR side does under Critchley. Score prediction in that one, going to back another tight 1-0 for Sunderland. Burnley up against Watford. We spoke during the Watford analysis previously about how the fixture list is really going to turn around quite sharply for Watford in terms of the teams they're going to be facing next up. I was at Turf Moor over the weekend to watch Burnley up against Preston, and they absolutely ran the show against us. I think they'll do that to the majority of the sides in the Championship when they're properly in the mood. Score prediction, I'm going to go 3-0 Burnley. Really feel like they're just going to continue to click up through the gears throughout the month of February. Reading up against Rotherham. We spoke previously about Reading maybe playing with the handbrake on at the moment, getting into that sort of coast mode where they feel like they won't go down but also won't have anything to play for with the teams above them, and that's quite a dangerous mindset to be in, especially against a very well-drilled Rotherham side who are on a decent unbeaten run at the moment. And dare I say it, I think the Millers could just nick that one on the road, you know. Going to go 1-0 Rotherham for that game, but you never quite know what you're going to get from Reading. Bristol City up against Wigan will be a really interesting test for Maloney. Obviously, back-to-back clean sheets in at Wigan there. It was a brilliant result with that late winner against Huddersfield, but Bristol City are on a good unbeaten run themselves, and I think the home side at Ashton Gate just takes that one, but a draw wouldn't surprise me. Going to go 1-0 Bristol City though. Preston up against Luton. It will be Luton looking to get back to winning ways after that draw over the weekend. Preston have been pretty hopeless at Deepdale so far, and with Ched Evans still suspended for this one, us looking light for goals and firepower in the final third, I think Luton take this one, if I'm honest, and the pressure continues to pile on low. Score prediction there, I'm going to go 2-0 Luton. Just don't think this North End squad has a lot of invention about us at this point in time. Stoke up against Huddersfield. Both sides could massively do with all 3 points in this one. Stoke in need of easing themselves away from the bottom three. If Huddersfield were to beat them in this one, they are right bang in it in a relegation scrap. Dare I say it, this one wouldn't surprise me if it headed towards another quite dull 0-0 affair. Score prediction there, I think I'm going to go for a 0-0. Swansea up against Blackpool. This one brings back memories of Mick McCarthy in at Cardiff up against Swansea for the South Wales derby, and thinking back to the last time Mick McCarthy came up against Russell Martin, was Russell Martin who absolutely wiped the floor with him. Now Swansea haven't been great recently. We spoke previously about the record of only 2 wins from their last 14 matches, but Blackpool currently on the longest winless run in the league, and while McCarthy has drilled in a bit more stability, a bit more resoluteness into this Blackpool side, I think it's going to be a tough ask for them to get all 3 points away at Swansea here, and I actually think that Swansea could return to winning ways there with a 2-0 win over Blackpool. Sheff United up against Middlesbrough. Is this the last chance of us maybe having an interesting run-in for an automatic race this season if Middlesbrough were to win this one and maybe apply the smallest bit of pressure on Sheffield United? It could happen, but the likelihood of that happening, I'm not all too sure. I've really liked the look of Middlesbrough under Michael Carrick, but this away at Bramall Lane may just be a step too far, and I think the Blades just edged this one, you know. Score prediction, going to go 2-1 Sheffield United in that game, which then tees us off for our last game, West Brom up against Blackburn. From nowhere, Blackburn are suddenly drawing matches, and West Brom themselves have been faltering a little bit recently, looking a little bit more vulnerable at the back with Button in net. I think I'm going to go for another 1-1 for Blackburn in there. But guys, those are my score predictions heading into the midweek matches. Do let me know your thoughts on them in the comments down below. But apart from that, guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. Plenty going on in the Championship at the moment, which I'm of course interested to get your guys' views on. But apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.